Welcome to the I Love Recruiting podcast with your host, Adam Roach.
Welcome back, everybody, to the I Love Recruiting podcast. I am your host, Adam Roach, and today we have someone very near and dear to my heart, a great friend, a great mentor, someone that I've looked up to for the last at least 10 years. Someone that really needs no introduction inside of the KW world. However, outside of KW, she has really impacted a lot of people in the real estate world. She lives in Texas. I've been to her home. I've been to her home in San Diego. Everybody, welcome Linda McKissack to the show. Linda, welcome.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. So I'll give everybody a quick little history about our relationship. Okay. So I was an agent in the Beverly Hills office. This is late 2000s. And wanted to become a team leader. And there was a team leader opportunity in Carmel, Indiana, which is northern Indianapolis. And that is the region that you own. And it was at the time, I don't know if it still is, a market center that you own, right?
Yeah. I've sold out. I don't own it any longer. Those people were just scared to do it. And I stepped in as that, security blanket. And then when that was no longer needed, I stepped out.
Exactly. And so I came in as a team leader and I got to meet you. And that was probably one of the most empowering things I'll never forget. I had the opportunity of picking you up from the airport. You came in and then I had to set some appointments for you to recruit some people. And I think I might have had 3 or 4 appointments set up. And you asked me this question. I love it. And then we'll dive into some questions that I have. And you said, well, how many of these appointments were set or set up through other people? And I said, none. I set them all up myself. And she's like, and I think you said something to this fact of, you're building your market center around your agents. You need to go through your agents. Stop working so hard. I remember that. Yeah. So let's dive into this. So you are, as it relates to KW, one of the largest, if the largest profit share earner, you and Jimmy, right?
Yep.
Now, let's go back to the history of that, because I know some stories, but I want to hear it from your mouth. So how long were you with KW before you really realized that profit share was a legit thing?
Well, for the first 4 years, I wouldn't even let them talk to me about profit share. I thought it was this kind of hoaxy thing that everybody talked about. And I had done MLM before, to be honest with you. So I kind of just put it over in that category. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of one of those people, once I go forward, I have a hard time ever going back to something. I probably almost closed my mind a little bit on it. And so I think that's probably what I did. I saw it more as some kind of MLM or something like that, which it's not totally anything like that at all. But I just, I was also at the phase in an agent's life when you think 50 more houses or 100 more houses or 200 more houses is going to solve all your problems. Mm-hmm. And so you're not really, you got your blinders on anything else. However, we had suffered, losing everything in the late 80s. So we understood gradually, and then suddenly your money can go away. And so I think the pain of that made me open when I did open myself up to understanding it more. But I also think I kind of thought I already had the avenue. I'd already been buying rent houses and stuff like that. So I really kind of thought we already had that in the bag. Why would I look for something else? So I really didn't let anybody talk to me about profit share literally for the first 4 years. I didn't even close my ears to it. I didn't even investigate it. Didn't do anything.
Right. And then what happened? So Gary challenged you to do something.
Well, before that, I always like to say I had one of those really, really bad days in real estate. Mm-hmm. And most people who are in real estate can relate to this. It's so bad. You go find your resume and you actually pull it out of the drawer and you look at it. I mean, that's how bad it was. I think if I could have gotten anything over minimum wage for that resume, I might have seriously sent it out somewhere. But you look at it and then you go, oh yeah, I remember why I sell houses again. Oh, this thing didn't get me very much. And what it did get me, I didn't like it because there was no freedom with it. Mm-hmm. So, but it took a really bad day like that for me to wake up and go, okay, maybe I need multiple streams of income, or maybe I need to get to that, what I like to call nowadays the freedom number, even faster. And so maybe I should at least investigate what is profit share. And so, I always say when the student's ready, the teacher appears, and they appear in different ways. And so that's what started to happen. Once I opened my mind to, well, maybe I'll just look at this. Yep. You go find the answers when you decided you're going to do something. You either start to see the clues of who has the answers, or you go seek the answers. And so I remember I went to a person And I said, look, if I want to do anything, I always want to do it big. So if I wanted to make $1 million in this profit share thing, can you kind of work on some numbers for a few weeks and get back with me and tell me what that would look like?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he said, I don't have to get back with you. I already know. And I said, well, what is it? And he goes, well, you need to go get 20 people, help 20 people get 20 and have 5,000 people total. And so not knowing whether that was accurate or not accurate, I flipped it, my Nokia phone, and I put it on my front cover. So every time I flipped up my phone, I looked at that. And then I think it was like months later, Gary, we were back then, he does the top 200 agents masterminds now. We were the top maybe 20. I was the number one agent in Keller Williams at the time, and I bet there was 20 or 25 of us in the whole mastermind. And he went around the room that day, and we were talking on the topic of creating multiple streams of income. Mm-hmm. And so he challenged every one of us in the room to go get a standalone different business than your real estate sales business and do a pro forma on it. And so from doing that, it really made me realize, oh my God, first of all, the guy was right on exactly how to make $1 million. Mm-hmm. The performance showed me that. But it also showed me where the money came from, how to figure out what a capper would probably be worth to you if you wanted to figure the numbers. And so after going away and doing that so that I could come back and present it to my mastermind group, I really was convicted that, man, if I'm going to be a leader in this company and I don't help people self-discover this, wow, that would be horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that launched me into really starting to take it serious and to treat it like a business. And then my first thought was, how do I do this? Because nobody was telling you how to do it. I realized that I was going to use looking back, I realized this is what I did. I realized that I just started using the same formula that had actually built my real estate business, which is relationship plus validity plus people's value gaps over time. That's how I built my real estate practice to over 200 transactions a year. It's what I knew. It's what I naturally did. So I just applied that same formula. And when I look back, it's the same formula I've used to build over 100 single family homes. If you send me to Ohio, which Gary Keller did, and said, hey, build Keller Williams, it's the same formula. Mm-hmm. I just decided what relationships do I need? Who would I love to be a hero to? Who would I love to be in business with? And then once I had those identified, if I didn't have the validity, because you can't get into relationship with somebody until you have that validity. And so if I didn't have the validity, I went out and learned and grew until I got it. And then I used that validity to get them to open up to a relationship with me. And then I just, because we can't make buyers buy, sellers sell, or agents join. But what we can do is help people self-discover that whatever they want in life can be achieved with us, either through our services or in this case with Keller Williams. And so I would either ask great questions to them. I would learn stories inside KW that they could see themselves in to share the stories. Or I would try my best to get them to experientially experience who KW was, because that's how we all learn the best, right? That's how, our kids don't do what we tell them, our spouses don't do what we tell them. But if we can get them to experientially be in an experience, they will self-discover themselves. And you just do that through finding out what their value gaps are and dropping things into those value gaps. And as I did that over time, the hardest part was they get to decide the timeline. I might meet you, Adam, and say, gosh, Keller Williams would be perfect for you and you'd be perfect for KW. But until you self-discover, that might be 1 year. My longest person was 12 years. Wow. I may still have my longest one still working on them, but the longest so far has been 12 years. And that's the hardest part is we, in our minds sometimes think we can make people do something. So therefore we think we can get them to do it in a timeline that we want. And that's unfortunately, it's not true.
It's fascinating, Linda. I'm going to go back for a few minutes here. You actually got into this from a pain standpoint, is what I heard you say. You pulled out your resume. It's like, oh my gosh, what's next? What do I go do? And then it showed up and it's like, okay, now I'm going to go dive into this. And it's fascinating because when we look at people as we are sharing the value with them, a lot of times they don't see it until there is a pain point, right? There really is a pain point.
And Jimmy and I didn't understand wealth building until we lost everything in the late 80s and early 90s. And so even with what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19, that's why I always say there will be blessings and there will be lessons. We now say today, losing everything in the late 80s and early 90s was the worst thing that ever happened to us. And it was the best thing that ever happened to us because it opened us up to be open to multiple streams of income and understanding that your cash flow can go away, as a lot of people have experienced through COVID-19. It can just literally dry up or go away or go to a trickle or whatever. So that's why having multiple streams is even more important today than ever before.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree with that. Let's talk about COVID right now, since we're on the topic of it. What would you say to someone who is in a recruiting space, and either that's their job or that's a space that they're interested in? And that could be for anything, whether that's multi-level marketing, whether that's real estate, whether that's whatever industry they're in. What would you say to someone right now that may be a little reluctant to recruit during this time?
Well, because I'm just of the camp that the way you get what you want out of life is what Zig Ziglar says. You just help enough of other people get what it is they want. Mm-hmm. But the key word is, what do they want? Not what do I assume they want, what I think they should want, what am I excited about, so they should be excited about it. Not any of that, but truly getting to know the person well enough to know what their value gaps are and what they need, so that I can help them self-discover. I can fill that, or Keller Williams can fill that, or whatever company you're trying to recruit them to can fulfill that. And, I think, right now more than ever, people need people to care. I mean, I think our social media has opened this gap up to be a chasm, that's wide. I think COVID-19 has made it wider. I think we need to step into that and just say, as a care call, because in all of my calls that I make to people to recruit them, I never recruit them to Keller Williams. I never say KW. I never say Keller Williams, because it's not about Keller Williams. It's about them and getting to know them, starting that conversation. And I have a couple of favorite ways that I always like to start conversations that I need to start. And then I've got to get to know them and be interested enough in them to learn, what is their value gaps? Where do they have pain? And by the way, I have to be okay that I step into that pain and help them and get nothing for it, because I don't believe you ever don't get anything for it. I think you will get goodwill. I always like to say, I've got a top person right now that I've been working on forever. I've even since bought a market center that she's close to. I offered her some ownership. She still said no. But she tells everybody in the world that she loves the McKissacks. We've flown her and her husband here, and we've helped them really on some real estate stuff that was kind of a mess after 2008, 2009. And she will tell the world how much she loves us, and we're just her, best friends and mentors. And if that's the best I get, Adam, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because she could say that to someone who I am trying to recruit, or we are trying to recruit. If I just get goodwill, that's okay too. And so, my friend Joe Polish loves to say, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. So I think if you just come, even with your database right now, or anybody, if you're calling them, just come from a place of contribution and ask, how can you help? What can you give them? And just be there. I think there is no better time than now.
Right.
No better time than now, because they need it more than any, and maybe nobody's checked on them, or maybe nobody's asking, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Want to just talk I know I like to just talk to somebody during this and say, help me, let's talk to each other, because we're both in this and we're both leaders and we're trying to lead people. And so sometimes there's comfort in that. And sometimes people don't have anybody to do that with, and you might become that person for them. So now more than ever, just even do care calls would be fabulous to start that relationship, because you don't recruit them on the first call. You don't ever recruit them. They self-discover that they should join, and that could take many, many, many calls.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice there. I had a quick little story. I had a guy that I was recruiting for probably 5 years, and he was a Remax guy. And I say that because he would never come into the market centers to meet with me. He would always have me come into his office. Yeah. And I would go sit in the conference room with him, and all we would do is talk shop. We would talk shop about his business, and I would ask enough questions that would open up the gap, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I was in Austin, and he calls me up, and if he's listening to this, I love you to death, Greg. He calls me up and he says, Adam, I called him Grumpy Greg. Adam, I'm making a decision, and I'm gonna switch companies. and it's either between KW and somebody else. I said, Greg, stop. There's nobody else. You know it's KW. And he's like, you're right. You brought enough value and you showed me enough value, and it fits the gaps that I have. So that's, it's really, really good.
Yeah.
So let's get real for a second. Because again, sometimes when people are great at influencing people and again, discovering those value gaps, we can kind of make it look easy because we just want to provide value. However, we can make mistakes at the same time in real estate. In recruiting. What has been either a big mistake that you've made in a recruiting appointment or just recruiting somebody? What would be a mistake that someone listening could potentially not go through?
Well, the biggest one, the one that's most painful and hurts the most, is one where I pre-decided that someone wouldn't join. And they called me about 12 years ago and asked me to meet them in Austin the next week because they were going to be there all week. And oh, by the way, could I introduce them to Gary Keller? And my heart immediately sank because on one side it was jumping for joy because this person was such an amazing person that I knew she was like born to do KW. Mm-hmm. She already lived her life that way. And she was going to change so many other lives when she did it that I was like excited because the company's better because she's here. But I was sick because I had pre-decided because she had owned a Remax years ago and hated it. I had pre-decided that she would never join. So I never even tried to move her along the scale. I never tried to get her to self-discover by inviting her to something to KW. And it's so silly now because she's such a learning-based person. She would have went to anything because I had the validity to get her to go anywhere because we were in a mastermind group together for years. So now I go on vacation with her. As a matter of fact, they were supposed to come to our beach house last week in San Diego and her husband got sick. And every time I look at her, I have to remember, okay, Linda, that's you pre-decided. And she built an office to over 200 agents and, and I love her and I'm so happy and Keller Williams is so much better off because they have her, but I still get that lesson shoved in my face every time I see her when that's pretty painful. So that is the biggest mistake. And then I think we've all been guilty of getting so passionate and excited that in our meeting, we start to sell rather than ask. And so I think we're all guilty of that and myself included. And so, I learned a line a long time ago. I'm sorry. Don't confuse my passion for selling.
That's a good one.
Passionate and I know it sounds like I'm selling. So I try to remind myself and back off. So I think we all make that mistake. So that'd be my little mistake and my big mistake.
I teach profit share class virtually, and we have an exercise during the profit share class that they write down 5 names. Right after we talked about their first level, and I have them go down and write 5 names of people that they would really like to be in business with. And that's the very first thing I say as they're writing: don't prejudge, don't judge. I think I heard you say this to me, or someone said this to me a long time ago. You always have to ask the pretty girl to prom, right? You always have to ask, or pretty boy to prom, right? Whatever it may be, because they're probably not getting asked, or probably not getting talked to. And we have a tendency to say, yeah, I'm gonna judge that person because they probably never would.
Yeah. So true. Yeah. So don't pre-decide. We're right before COVID, we were actually going to fly to Austin and film our profit share mastery course that we've written actually a couple of years ago. And part of what we do in there, just kind of like your exercise, is we actually list all the mistakes that we tend to make when recruiting. And I said, you could be guilty of one of these, you could be guilty of all of them. But if you switch and you do this through the relationship, no one's going to see you as recruiting. The other ways we were trying to do it, people had their arms up against us like they were armed and armored against us because we were trying to sell them on something. And so I always say to people, if someone says to you when you're using this formula that you're just trying to recruit me, one of 3 things is happening. You've either gotten off the scale a little bit and you're doing it wrong. You have moved into selling. So check yourself on that. And if you check no to that box, then the second thing to do is say, oh, they've probably been done this way before by someone else. And so therefore they're expecting that from every KW person. Or number 3, you've done it that way to them before in the past. And so they're expecting you to sell them. And so I always say it's kind of like scripts and dialogues for listing appointments. You just have to have some good scripts so that you don't let that fear hold you back. And so I always say, here's the thing, Adam, if you said to me, Linda, you're just trying to recruit me, I would say, well, you know what, Adam, here's the thing. You're exactly the kind of agent that we want to be in business with. I hope that you and I can be at the same company someday. I've had great joy by being in the same company with some high-minded people. I love it. However, here's what I know for sure. If you ever believe that what you need to take your life and your business to go to the next level is here at KW, dude, I won't even have to recruit you. You'll be knocking our door down. And then we just go back to talking about what we were talking about, because again, I can't recruit someone. It's not possible. Right. And so I think once we get over that thought that there's a magical thing we can say or whatever, if they join, it's because they got pain and they think it's going to be solved over here.
And the fascinating part about that too, if we're just talking about KW specific or any recruiter for that standpoint, that's why it's so important to build your pipeline big.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, going as deep as you can in your pipeline with relationships that you've created, whether it's over a day or over a year, or in some cases 12 years. That's why you build that pipeline so deep, because someone will trickle out of that pipeline who has pain and sees value, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I know they'll do it on their timing, and I don't know when that is, for sure.
It's fascinating. So let's do this. Let's have some fun here. Knowing what you know and how you now teach classes and everything you've learned from all your fabulous coaches, So I want to say a thank you to you. 2 years now in a row, because of you, we've gotten to travel and see John Maxwell in Beverly Hills, and then in London last year. What an incredible trip that was. Everything you've learned now from all of your coaches and your leaders, and now your past experience, what would you go back and tell yourself, say 20 years ago, knowing what you know now in the recruiting space, about the recruiting space?
You know what? I would say every great mentor and coach that I've learned a lot from, they've taught me it's success through people, not around. So the faster I can get to a place where I genuinely add value to other people's lives, you're not going to be able to keep the money away. It's never about the money, but when you add the value, you can't keep the money away. So don't focus on anything else, but how do I get up every day and become more and more valid? Because it's my validity that's going to open the door to those relationships. And then how do I wake up every day and help people get what they want as fast as I possibly can? So through people, not around them. People are the greatest form of leverage any of us can learn to have, whether you're recruiting them into your company, or you're, whether this is an MLM person listening, or whether it's a KW person listening, or anybody whose job is recruiting. You got to love what you're bringing those people to so much. You're changing their lives. Real quick thing that happened the other day when I was on a Zoom. Al Donahue has quite a few market centers, and he asked me to jump on and talk to his leadership and add value about wealth building. And one of the things I talked about with recruiting, well, the first thing he did was he had every single one of them write in the sidebar how this company has changed their life. And I'm going to tell you, Adam, him doing that exercise was so convicting to me that I also said it should be convicting to every one of you to sit and read what those people said and talked out loud, because some of them actually voiced them out loud. And you're not convicted to get up every day and go keep trying to do that. Wow. Because every one of us would say, hey, my life has been changed drastically. And yet we still are reluctant to go change other people's lives like our life was changed, by at least giving them the opportunity to self-discover that this company could change their life too. So that was a really cool exercise. And I just happened to be on the Zoom early, and he did that before I jumped on and started talking. And that was just even more conviction to me of why I do what I do, and I'll always do it, and why everyone who has the opportunity to recruit someone to anything that you love or that you believe in should have that kind of conviction. Because I'm going to tell you, it's going to have changed lives, and those stories are there. You just need to revisit them and remind yourself, even your own.
Well, and what a great exercise. There's many team leaders that listen to this right now. What a great exercise for a team leader to do. Go back in the market center and engage their agents to understand what they've done, so they can go out and do it and share their people with their team leader, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny you should say that. And I didn't know if that was a good tie, because remember when I started this, I said, you got mad at me for setting the appointments around my agents versus through the agents. That makes sense now.
Yeah.
I even think you said, why don't you just take me back to the airport?
I did not cut you any slack. I will be honest.
Yeah, we had fun though. We had a lot of fun. Okay, that's fantastic. So I want to go off real quick. What if you were a team leader? If you got hired to be a team leader tomorrow?
Yeah.
What would be the first 3 things that you would do? Let's say the market center was it was a turnaround market center. Okay, so this is a market center for those that don't speak KW. It's an office that needs to be just turned around, record, new leadership. What would be the top 3 things that you would do?
Well, the first thing I would do is go get in a relationship with my people in my company already and try to figure out, because usually in a situation like that, there's some pain and there's some disappointment and there's some, things like that. I would go try to get in a relationship with each one of those people and see, what from their perspective, where are we? If where are we right now? Right. And because if I don't go fix whatever that is, and then I would go outside and try to see what the perspective is from the outside looking in. Who are we? Because sometimes we see who we are, but we don't know how other people see us, and we don't know what the issue is. If they say, well, the issue is we think everybody at KW is very low producers and nobody produces anything. Let's say in this particular market center, that's what they said. Then I know that I need to go out, which I probably need to do this anyway, go out and recruit some top talent to change that image. So I'm going to go inside first, make sure all my people are okay, start building a relationship there, because they're not also, remember, relationships are about people trusting you and seeing you valid enough to open up to a relationship. So they're going to have to see that in me first. And then they're really going to have to see that before they're willing to share a name of somebody with me that I can call on for them. So I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to go outside and start doing the very same things. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time just building those relationships outside, seeing what their perspective is of us as a company. What are the things I probably need to fix? And then I'm going to also, in the meantime, figure out what some of their value gaps are outside so I can start filling those.
That's really, really good. Thanks for sharing that. Because what's really fascinating about that is if we go to a team leader profile, team leaders love to talk, right? I mean, let's just be honest. They're usually very charismatic, very outgoing.
Yes.
Now, this would also be something that I'm just going to be transparent and talk about myself for a second. I had when I was in a team leader role for a little while, I did have people looked at me as maybe a little disingenuous or inauthentic because I tried to show up with this big personality, because I tried to show up and lead with my personality and not value. And it's fascinating looking back on it now. I wanted to be valued, but I wasn't as valuable as I needed to be. So what would you suggest to someone or coach someone on right now that maybe shows up with big personality, and you kind of say, calm that down just a little bit, show up with a little more value? What would you suggest to someone to do that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to suggest the same thing I suggested to you, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but I'm going to say 2 things to this. One, remember—
It might have started with sit down, boys, and shut up and listen. I think that's how it might have gone.
First was, Adam, you have children at home, right?
Yeah.
How would you speak to them?
Mm-hmm.
How would you show up to them? Because we show up the most authentic with our children, usually, right? And I know you are, because I know you're an amazing dad. I have watched you be on trips together, and you are always making that call, and I hear how you talk to them. So I know you're an amazing, loving father. So I usually say to people, if you do you have kids, show up like you show up to them, right? And then the other thing I would say is, remember, your role, if you're doing this correctly, is to not speak more than 10%, max 20. That means they got to speak 90 to 80. So I better have some amazing ways to get them to talk, because the person that talks the most always feels like it was the best presentation. And I'll never forget, Oprah and several other great leaders said one time, what she felt like most people wanted, having thousands and thousands of people on her show, was to be understood, not interpreted. And this is in Fierce also that I love to teach. It talks about, you get emotional capital with people that way. They want to be understood, not interpreted. And most people think listening is just waiting for their turn to talk.
Right.
And the truth is, when I'm talking, nobody thinks that I care. You know what I mean? So just learn that in your mind. Okay, Linda, 10% max. And this is, not that I'm okay with silence, but if I think I'm an expert on something, I like to talk about it too. We all do. This is a learned habit.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you practice it, the better you get at it. This isn't something that, maybe there are some people born naturally like this. I don't know them, but you definitely, if you're going to be in leadership, and I think recruiting is leadership, you're going to have to learn this, and it may take some time. So you better get started.
Yeah. Well, for all those listening, I did get a little bit better. And I did get to the point where, and you'll appreciate this, Linda. So 2 things. We do have an equation here on the I Love Recruiting podcast, and that's recruiting equals influence equals leadership. And it goes back the other way, leadership equals influence, which equals recruiting. And I created this needs analysis sheet that's 26 questions long. And so if anybody wants that, go to iloverecruiting.com and put your name in there. I'll be happy to send it to you. And when I created that, I then had a coach at the time. They said, see if you can go into an appointment and only ask questions. And so I took that 26 and I was in there for about 45 minutes, and I came out and I put tally marks at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I came out and I had asked 95 questions. 95 questions, and the individual stood up and he said, that was probably one of the best meetings I've ever had. But he goes, I don't know a damn thing about you. I said, well, that's good. I'll talk to you tomorrow at 3:00.
And it's okay if they get up and say, I don't know anything about you and I don't know anything about your company, because you can do that the next time. You can get a little bit more into that, but it's so much better when they ask about it than you start off just trying to sell it to them. It's just, it's kind of like, people they appreciate what they learn about it more when it was their idea to learn about it. So I love that. Yeah.
Totally.
I always say, when I start my relationships with people, I have to have a conversation. And so I always say my 2 favorite ways to start a conversation is, and con in Spanish does mean with. So I got to lob enough in that when I'm having this phone call to them, they think it's a conversation. You were in a team leader role. So when they get to there, you're now asking questions. They've now asked to be invited to that. But when I'm starting that conversation with them, I always say, I need to lob enough in that they feel comfortable telling me what some of their challenges are and that kind of stuff. But other than that, I'm going to let them do most of the talking. But 2 ways I like to start the conversation. One is a compliment, because nobody ever gets enough of them and nobody ever minds a new one.
It's true.
But they have to be genuine and real. People can see through fake and made up. And then number 2 is I ask for their input or their thoughts, because it's another thing that people don't get asked enough. I always have this very impactful place when I teach Fierce Conversations where I tell the story about a guy from GE who said, for 35 years they had my hands, and for free they could have had my head, but they never asked. Wow. And so I think people love to tell you what they think or what their thoughts or what their input is, but because they don't get asked enough, people are hungry for that. So those are my 2 favorite ways to start a conversation. And sometimes I'll put them both into one thing, but again, nobody ever minds being asked, what do you think? Or what are your thoughts around X?
Right. Wow. Great stuff, Linda. Thank you. Those everybody listening, podcasts are usually free. I think I might sell this one. And Linda, we'll split the proceeds. Yeah, that's really
on our next vacation.
Really good. So let's wrap this up. So coming back to this and looking back at yourself when you were looking at that resume to where you are now, and to all the recruiters that are listening and the team leaders that are listening, what's a parting word that you would say to them to keep them growing in the space of wanting to bring value, wanting to dive into relationships with these people versus hiding behind the bush and jumping out and say, I got you, and I'm going to now try to recruit you? We've got a lot of value here. What's a parting word you would like to say to them to say, what you said to me, just sit down and shut up and listen, boy?
Well, I think you have to ask yourself, go back and remind yourself, do whatever you got to do to remind yourself of the value you're bringing to someone. Because to me, especially if you're in a role where this is your job to be paid, if you're not so darn excited about everything new that we have coming down the pipeline and all the things, then you got to figure out how to get yourself excited about that, because whatever I am recruiting someone to, I have to be so passionate, and not in the passionate way of selling, but in the passionate of, I've seen my life change. I've seen other people's lives change. I can't not do this. I mean, this is something you can't keep me from doing this. I have to do this. Then, maybe check, should you even be doing this? Or do you not have enough, have you not fallen in love with it enough yourself to feel convicted about doing that? So I would say, go back and sometimes we all have to, I went to the ocean just for a few days ago because I just needed to look at some different walls. I mean, I have some beautiful walls here at home, as you know, Adam, but I needed the ocean because the ocean reoriented my thinking around how grateful I am for a beautiful ocean and sand in your toes and, all the many things. And, it's easy to get down, especially right now. I mean, I've even caught myself being blue, and I'm not normally a very blue person for very long. I'll go take a run or eat an oatmeal cream pie. Something's going to change my mood. Right. And, but we all get stuck in that a little bit. So what I have found is go find other people who are passionate, who can share their ideas. We were on Zooms yesterday all day for the top 100 agents, the top team leader, top OPs. And I got so excited every time I listened to another video of someone who's using command or someone who's using something that, to get more agents to respond. A team leader got on there and talked about this smart plan that she put together. I mean, I get on fire. So if you need to get into those situations so that you can get on fire, whatever gets you on fire. And then if you can't get on fire after that, you need to say, am I maybe in the wrong role? Because you can't be excited about something. I mean, I can't feel good about when you think you're doing something to someone instead of for someone, it's never going to work out. So you got to figure that out.
That's incredible. And that can transcend anything. I mean, a job, a recruiter, a passion, and whatever it is, right? That transcends everything. So that's incredible. Well, Linda, this has been real. This has been amazing. Thank you for all of those nuggets. I think I took 2 pages of notes right here. This is really good.
And I appreciate you doing this. What a great podcast. I'm excited to know. I'm going to subscribe myself now that I know you have a podcast, since it's one of my favorite topics.
Absolutely. So how can people go find you? Where can they learn more about some of your classes? I'm wearing t-shirt podcast junkies. Linda her and Dana have their own podcast, Everything Life and Real Estate. Everyone go subscribe to that. Where can they find you? How can they go learn more?
Yeah, I know I need to learn all this. I told my assistant, will you give me all that information, which I have it somewhere. But the best thing to do is, and I'll give them a gift if that's okay. That way it'll make it easier for them. But if they will text to the number 33444, if you'll text to the number 33444, it's going to ask you for your email, and you will get an email from us that actually gives you a freedom number worksheet. Because I think everybody in the world coming through COVID-19 has found places in their life where they need more of a freedom lifestyle. And so it all starts with, what does that number look like? Even if it's the wrong number starting out, our number was only 250,000 when we started out. We've blown way past that passively. However, I think you need a number sometimes to get started, so they can get that worksheet. It'll also subscribe them to our website. And then when we get the profit share course out, all the different things, they'll be the first to get notified. So that's probably the best thing. And then Dana and I are having a blast with Everything Life in Real Estate. So if they're in the real estate business, or even if you're not, we talk about everything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, find us there also. But LindaMcKissack.com is the website. If they just want to go straight to there, but you can also get the freedom worksheet, and that'll trigger you into our website too.
Perfect. That's 33444, and put in the email address. So so sorry, a real important part. They got to type in the words freedom number, all as one word. Thank you, Adam. That would be bad. Yeah. 33444, and then type in freedom number, all one word. Whew. Yeah. Gotcha. Number is the word, not the hashtag number sign, right?
Hashtag is the word. Freedom and number, 2 words, put them together as one.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've used that freedom sheet. It's incredible. Everybody go do that right now. And also go wherever you download, go give us a feedback. Give us whatever you want to tell us about this webinar or about I Love Recruiting podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback, good, bad, or ugly. Just bring it to us. We love it. And again, I am your host, Adam Roach, with Linda McKissack. Linda, thank you so much. Love and grateful for you. Take care.